All right. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are. Welcome to Cool Your Heels with Lillian on AMFM247.com and Passionate World Radio Network, the world in your hands. And this morning, our special guest is Romola, who wrote the book called
The Princess of 42nd Street, Surviving My Childhood as the Daughter of Times Square's King of Porn.
So what prompted you to finally write about your experiences?
I always knew that I wanted to write about my experiences. I just wanted to wait for my dad to pass because no matter what he did, I didn't want to embarrass him or my mom. Not that she would have really known. She was kind of mentally ill the last 20 something years, even before that. But yeah, so dad passed like 4 years ago. And then I had been doing research before he passed, found myself a ghostwriter, which turned out to be a nightmare, and then stopped writing for a year and found another ghostwriter who's amazing. So I guess that's what the universe wanted.
Oh, great. So why did you end up living in the porn shops or the adult sexual shops? Was that the best place to hang out while you were growing up?
I was very curious. I knew that my father was doing something strange. But then when I was 14, my dad was on the front page of the New York Daily News for like a week. And my first period teacher, who was a nudnik, would start class off, asking me questions about what she read. And instead of talking about, science and sedimentary rocks and whatnot, she's asking me all these questions. So I said, I want to know what my dad does. So I went into the city and started looking around and then started going up to Show World to speak to these girls. I wanted to know why they did what they did. And some of them were very nice.
I know that when I would go into New York City to visit my orthodontist and also my grandmother who lived across town, I went in through Port Authority.
Right.
And Port Authority, bless its little heart, as a bus terminal for the city and everything else, was you had to go past 42nd Street.
Yeah.
And you would look up the avenues, and there you would see all the shops, the girly shops. In fact, when I was 17, a friend and I got caught in a rainstorm, and we dashed into the first building that had an open door, and it was the Playboy Bunny Club.
Ah.
And I thought the proprietor would have a heart attack. He says, you can't stay here. And they said, but it's raining outside. And he says, okay, but don't move. Would you guys like some tea? Yeah. So these ladies came dressed as bunnies, and we were both very innocent. And we asked her what they did. They couldn't believe it. Boy, were they voluptuous. And
yeah.
So was that your way of learning all about adult life?
There was lots of ways I learned about adult life. Besides, interviewing those women, my father and mother had crazy parties at home. We vacationed with the mob. There was a lot of police activity at the house. There was other ways. Yeah.
So how did your father get involved in this in the first place? Was he brought up in the mob family?
Oh. No, I'm joking.
Well, give us a little bit of the hint.
I'm teasing. Yeah. So my dad had when he got out of college and did a little stint in Korea, he met this man who gave him gumball machines. And then he added cigarette and pinball machines, and the man couldn't pay him, so the man gave him some jukeboxes. So he had a little route for himself. And he put cigarette machines, and I'm not sure if there were any pinball machines, but in some stores on 42nd Street.
Right.
So on his way home, he was in New Jersey, coming from an account, and he had to go to the bathroom, and he went into an arcade. And when he went downstairs in the basement, there were 15 old peep shows down there, you know, the ones that had Popeye, but
Right.
they were like small refrigerators. They were these big rectangle boxes, and you'd put your eyes, you probably remember.
Yes, you put your
Popeye.
eyes up to them, and yeah.
So my father was like, wow, why don't I take Popeye out and put in, girly movies? So he bought them, and he got film, and he went around 42nd Street, and all the store owners were like, don't you think if this could be done, they would be doing it? I'm sure you need a license, blah, blah, blah. My father had hired a lawyer. You did not need a license. And I remember the first place, 259 West 42nd Street, my dad put 2 machines in. At the end of the day, he gets a phone call. Marty, they can't put any more quarters in. The machines are broke. There's a line out the door. My father runs into the city and always told the story. He took out all the quarters so the machines would work again. There had to be 200 men wrapped around. There was probably 50 or something, I think I invented sex, he said. My father was a character, even though he was a brute and psychotic, but he was a character. So that's what happened. And then the other stores started taking the machines. And then my father called the guy from New Jersey and said, I want more machines. He goes, I can't help you. He found the manufacturer on the machine who was in Kentucky. The man in Kentucky said, I'm not making them anymore. He goes, I'll buy 50. He goes, when do you want them? And my father went to Kentucky and started bringing back machines and placing them all over. And I don't know, do you know the show The Deuce on HBO?
No.
Okay, so this is the 2nd season of The Deuce. James Franco and Maggie Gyllenhaal are producing, along with, I'm forgetting the guy's name now. Some famous guy who did The Wire, George Papadopoulos, I don't remember. Anyway, so I knew years ago when they were doing it, I'm like, my father's going to have to be in it. Frankie and Vincent, the 2 twins that Franco plays, these were real people.
Right.
So anyway, my father, Saul Stein, the actor, plays my father in it, and it's weird. Marty this and Hodis that, and they were all angry at him because they had come in a little bit before him, and when my father came in, he just started putting those machines out and buying buildings, and they were kind of mad at him because he was making more money. So it's very interesting watching that. And I've become friends with Saul, and we're hoping to do a spinoff. So we'll see. We'll see what the universe does.
Absolutely. Now, you were talking about the Jewish mafia protecting your dad. And please explain to people what the Jewish mafia is, because I don't think people really understand that every ethnicity seems to have their version of the mafia within their society.
That's right. The Asians have it.
Yeah, they call the Khans or the Tongs or whatever.
And the Russians certainly have it.
Oh, yes.
And the Jews had it. I think it was the Cosa Nostra. I think that was, my father didn't talk about it too much, but I know that Whitey Leibowitz used to beat up his guys if they couldn't pay him back. And my father found out through some means or whatever. And my father said, look, have the guys come work for me. These guys have families, kids. Let them work for me, pay you back. So Whitey thought that was quite nice of my father. So when he had problems with the regular mob, Whitey had Sean and other men protecting my dad. And what my father did, which was very interesting, and my brother tells this story to my brother and my brother-in-law, who's passed now. they had to go to a meeting with one of the Italian mob people who said, and I had heard the story over and over, but my brother, what's that word? My brother let me know that it was real. This mobster said, we really, really respect your father because he wouldn't pay us a dime. And he used to come home, Dad, and walk back and forth. They'll have to kill me before I give him a nickel of my money. And what he did was he sat down with them and said, I'm not giving you any of my money, but what I will do is I'll teach you how to run porn stores. And you got to get your machines from me and your tapes from me and da-da-da. So that's kind of how my father protected himself.
Right.
And I do know that there was some issues that, the Jewish mob had to come in to protect my dad. He kept a lot of those stories from us. It was very interesting. 3 days. My father came back 4 years ago when my father came back from Florida. He was a snowbird. Right. I said to my sister, before you go see your kids in Chicago, let's go see Daddy. My father had COPD, and he got much sicker. My brother had shot himself 3 years before and lived. So anyway, we went over to see my dad, and all of a sudden, Dad starts telling us all these stories that we knew of, but we didn't know the stories because we were too young back then, and they hid a lot of that stuff from us. So it was very interesting because these were great stories from my book. But as we left, and that was one of the stories he told me that I just told you, and he said, my sister Risa, who was kind of close with him, said, bye, Dad, I love you. And he said, I love you, girls. And as he closed the door, I said, Risa, you have to get ready. Daddy's going to die. He never says he loves me. 3 days later, he was dead. So he must have known something. He must have known inside.
I think they know in advance. My mother told me, my father is waiting for me at the end of my bed, and he's very patient. But he says he's going to go away if I don't hurry up. 3 days later, she was dead.
Wow.
So I think they do know.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's the traditional somebody's waiting for them or there's a bright light somewhere, I don't know. Yeah, but I have a feeling that a lot of them do have a sense. Now, when you were a child growing up, did you have any trouble making any friends, or do your parents have your problems because of who your dad was and what he did?
Yeah. I wasn't allowed in people's homes and they weren't allowed in mine. And my first boyfriend, who I wound up marrying, his mother, he lived in Brooklyn. I used to have to wait outside while Joey was eating. His mother would not let me in the house. She was sure that I was in my father's films. So finally, after, I don't know, a year and a half or whatever, she opens up the door and she goes, come here, come in. And we became close. I'm like, couldn't you have asked me? You assumed, but she was an old Italian.
She was trying to protect him. And
yeah.
And then that was her way of doing it. And she didn't know whether or not your dad would come after her.
Yeah.
People manufacture stories about what they don't know.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah. I remember one time I was at a bar mitzvah and I was crying on the stairs, and my friend Liz comes out like, what's wrong? And I said, my life is what's wrong. I'm embarrassed to go to school. And I started cutting school. It was embarrassing to go to school. Meanwhile, at my launch that I just had at the Museum of Sex, people were like, we had our own problems. We didn't even know. I'm like, what? I don't go to reunions because I'm so embarrassed. They were like, come to the reunions. I'm like, okay. Because I'm thinking everybody in school knew. They didn't.
And they probably couldn't have cared. I know that when my son was growing up, he's an artist. He was already in life studies, drawing naked women. and his friends would beg him for pictures of naked women. And boy, he had a very brisk business going on. So, and the parents were hysterical. And I said, where do your kids get 25, 30 bucks to buy the pictures with? I got it from the parents. I said, I'm more hysterical that they have a little 7-year-old has 35 bucks in their pockets to spend on what my son is drawing than what my son is drawing. It's very relative.
Right.
So it's very interesting. So did you ever graduate from high school?
My parents sent me to reform school.
Reform school?
Yeah, with prostitutes and drug lords and really scary people. Because I had cut school with Joey because I couldn't stand going to school. So in reform school, I got my GED and then I went to college. And I went to college for law and psychology. Wasn't for me.
So what did you end up doing?
I became a holistic practitioner. I went to school for nutrition and how stress affects the body and energy work. And I wasn't making any money 35 years ago. And then I got into the natural food industry, which was amazing. I sold a lot of amazing products to the natural food industry, helped it grow. I was one of the first women on the East Coast to do it. And it was great. It was a bunch of hippies and intellectual people. And then now it's just business. You know, I used to sell to the Whole Foods. The Whole Foods was called Bread and Circus. And it was just 5 stores up in Massachusetts. And I was like, it's never going to come to Manhattan. It's huge.
Oh, like yes, I know it's huge.
Yeah, there's like 8 of them in New York City. And they're all over now.
They're all over the world. Yes. Holistic is quite the buzzword. Absolutely. So after writing this book and maybe a sequel to the movie that's been released, what else do you see yourself doing in the next 5 years?
I really want to do public speaking. Of course, tell the story about history that people don't know about my dad. But in living the life that I lived, there was a lot of addiction in my family. And I became a problem drinker and learned to moderate that through going moderation management and books and whatnot. And I consult. I talk to people, especially women, because women our age can be drinking a lot now.
Absolutely. And that little 1 glass of wine to relax and to get stress-free can lead to us.
Right.
I know.
Right. So I know how much that saved my life, moderating, learning to moderate, and how proud I am of myself. I mean, I mess up, but I want to offer that to women. If men want to come to, but I want to do public speaking. That's what I'm working on right now. After I get off this podcast with you, I have my co-authors helping me with 2 speeches that I have. And once I have them under my belt, there's no stopping me. I'm going to go out. I have somebody, some people really, really look forward to doing a TED Talk. I don't, but I can do one. More so, I just want to get out and I want to talk to college people even. Because in my practice, so many kids out of college that go to corporate, they just keep drinking.
Yeah, they don't understand. But that's the culture we came from.
I know.
In the 50s and the 60s, that's all your parents did. Have a drink.
Right. Or pop a Valium.
On top of volume. Yes. Right. Uppers and downers. Absolutely. Right. Way before it became infamous.
Right.
So Romola, please tell everybody where they can find your books, where they can find you on the World Wide Web, and anything else you want them to know.
You can find me at romola.com, ROMOLA.com. You can buy the book on Amazon. You can go to your bookstore and ask for it. And also, if there's anybody out there that wants to discuss their problem drinking, Creating Harmony which is mindfulmoderation.com. So it's creatingharmonymm.com.
Terrific. And before we close out, John Selden had this to say in the mid-17th century: few men make themselves masters of the things they write or speak. Thank you all very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this morning's interview with Marola Hodis and her book, The
Princess of 42nd Street, Surviving My Childhood as a Daughter of Times Square's King of Porn. By the way, my dad was Marty Hodis.
Thank you. And you can find this video on youtube.com/PWR Network LLC, facebook.com/PWR Network LLC, https://passionateworldtalkradio.com, googleplus.com/PWR Network LLC, and all the other fine outlets that showcases video. Thank you all very much for listening. And remember, please keep listening. Thank you.
Thank you.